All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to start out talking about the shooting incident that happened on Tuesday down on 46th Avenue North. And I wanted to give you an update. I know we did a press conference down there at the scene that day and have since provided some updates, but I want to kind of run through the scenario. And we have some video that we're going to release and play for you here. Of course, we'll go through it here and then we'll have copies of it available for you. Just to kind of recap, the person who did the shooting on Tuesday is Larry Hode. He's a 65-year-old male that was living at 4809 46th Avenue North, Apartment 1 in Lellman area, which is unincorporated St. Petersburg. As we know, this event occurred on Tuesday, October 11th at about 12:50 p.m. So if we go back in time regarding Hode, we have records of complaints going back to 1992 that Hode was stalking and exposing himself to young children. Hode was living elsewhere. He wasn't living at the 46th Avenue location, and he didn't move into that residence until about 2005. In 1992, Hode was arrested for exposure of sexual organs. In 1993, reports indicate he was having neighbor disputes and told neighbors that he would hurt anyone who continually harassed him. In one 1993 incident, Hode had issues with a neighbor who was walking his dog. That neighbor heard what he described at the time, the sound of a gun being cocked. Hode admitted owning the gun, but he denied threatening the neighbor. In 1996, Hode was arrested for lewd and lascivious behavior, and he was acquitted at a trial. We have no record of any contact with Hode between 1996 and 2010. Now, that doesn't mean anything other than the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office and what we can determine at this point here in Pinellas County didn't have any contact with him. But remember, all the law enforcement agencies in Pinellas County have different records management systems, so there may have been contact with other law enforcement agencies, but just not with us or those that are on our records management system. In 2010, Hode was living again back here at this 46th Avenue address, and we received similar complaints about neighbor disputes and his interaction and antagonistic interaction with his neighbors. And those complaints were received again in 2010, 2011, 2012, and 2014. We didn't receive anything in 2015. And we received one complaint again in April of 2016. In a 2014 complaint, Hode actually called us and said that he had a shotgun pointed at him by one of his neighbors. That allegation was determined to be unfounded, and Hode himself was Baker acted as a result of that incident. Many neighbors in that 46th Avenue area, so we're talking about 46th Avenue to the north of 46th Avenue, up to about 47th Avenue, and from 47th Way to the west. And there were many individual residences in that area, some duplexes and triplexes, but many of those people had complained to the landlord about Hode and requested that he be evicted. But these complaints were for many petty things, and I think that the landlord and others thought that these were your typical neighborhood disputes, and they were complaints about things like people not bringing in their trash can, not picking up their dogs after they walked them, of that nature. And then Hode would get back at them by leaving his trash out and letting it pile up, those kinds of things that were these neighborhood spats. Then this past June, Hode complained that he and Sean Smith is a victim of the shooting by Hode, and they lived in the same triplex. So at that same address, you had three apartments, 1, 2, and 3. Hode lived in 1, and Sean Smith lived in 2, and they had a shared garage. And Hode complained that there was a joint light in the garage that cost a whole whopping $18 a year to power up that light. But Hode didn't like the fact that that light was a shared light and it was costing him money. So he complained to the landlord. The landlord said that they would cover the cost, but that wasn't enough for Hode, and he decided that he was going to cut the power cord to the light. Well, at that point, that kind of was a breaking point for the landlord, and the landlord decided, based upon all of this, even though it was many petty things for a long time, that it was time for Hode to go. And it was after that incident that the landlord told Hode that he needed to be out by September 1st. He didn't leave, and the landlord initiated the eviction proceedings, and it was a result of those eviction proceedings that a deputy arrived on Tuesday morning at about 9:30 and served Hode with the eviction papers. As I said from the scene the other day, it was uneventful. When the deputy arrived, he gave Hode the eviction papers, told him he had to be out within 24 hours. No reaction out of Hode, nothing unusual, what we would consider to be a normal and uneventful service of the eviction papers. Getting to the more specifics of the incident, we believe that at about 12:45 p.m. on Tuesday, Hode exited his home carrying a 9mm handgun with a 15-round magazine capacity. And he had at least one other magazine with him with additional bullets. What we believe happened is that Hode went around to the backside or to the north of this triplex, and I'll describe this to you here. So this is 4809 46th Avenue. And you can see that you have apartment 1, apartment 2, and apartment 3. Again, this is where Hode lived, and this is where Sean Smith lived. That is what I'll call a courtyard area that would be an entrance into Sean Smith's residence. So what Hode had to do is come out of his residence and come back around here and go into that courtyard area. And when Hode went into that courtyard area, he encountered Smith, and we believe Smith had probably just arrived home from work. And he shot Smith and struck him in the back. The bullet went out into the front and caused just massive injuries to Hode in the abdomen and chest area. And Smith also suffered a gunshot wound behind his ear in his neck and head area. The landlords employed a man by the name of Alan Cameron as a handyman, and he had been working for them there for a period of time. And Cameron was painting the residence that day at the landlord's direction. So when Hode came in, he shot Sean Smith here. Sean Smith drops to the ground, and Alan Cameron was painting the wall over here facing the wall. He heard the gunshots, he turned around, and when he turned around, he saw Hode pointing the handgun at him, and Hode fired at Cameron, and he missed. The bullet struck the wall, and Cameron literally ran for his life and fled northbound and went out an east exit of the courtyard. After Smith's laying on the ground there, dying, Hode left and went over to another neighbor's residence. He went to 4813 46th Avenue North, which is going to be just to the west, and this is the residence of Dave Foreman. So again, we've got Smith and Hode's triplex here, and apartment number 3 was empty. So they lived in 1 and 2. He leaves the courtyard and comes out here and walks around, and we'll show you some video of that. And he goes over here to Dave Foreman's house. And again, Dave lives 1 house to the west of the triplex. When Hode got to Foreman's house, he fired 11 rounds, 9 rounds into the door, 1 round into the windshield of Foreman's vehicle, and another round into a window on the east side. Mr. Foreman was in his home. He was in his office at the time. And as you'll see here in the video I'm going to show you, thankfully for him, his front door was locked, because otherwise Hode would have gone in and shot him and probably killed him. Foreman had installed an extensive video camera system in his home out of concern because of past interactions with Hode, that Hode may have tried to harm him. Mr. Foreman had complained many times about Hode's actions. He had informed other neighbors that Hode had a criminal history and had accused Hode of enticing and photographing neighborhood children. So there was a real effort by Foreman for a long time, along with other neighbors, to get Hode out of there. Again, they wanted him evicted, they wanted him out, they thought that he was inappropriate in his actions, and as people referred to him as freaky and creepy, and that's the way they viewed him. And again, he was antagonistic and was not a cooperative neighbor. So at the crux of it, Foreman had made it clear he wanted Hode out. At one point earlier this year, Foreman had given Smith and his wife some information about Hode's criminal history, and the Smiths reached out to the landlord and again asked that he be evicted. So Hode knew that the Smiths, that Foreman and others were actively trying to get him out. And again, so that's the background and puts it in context for the eviction papers being served at 9:30 in the morning and what Hode did at about 12:45 and began at about 12:45. So what I'm going to do now is step aside. We'll put the screen down here, and I'm going to show you the video, and I'm going to stop it, and hopefully we can do that, Spencer. We can stop it. After, what you're going to see is you're going to see Hode as he's leaving the courtyard. He's got a gun in his hand. He approaches Foreman's house. You'll see him shoot into the front door because Foreman has a video camera, because he's established this elaborate system because he's so concerned about Hode, that shoots out the front door. So you'll see him walk up. What you'll see is he tries the door handle. The door handle's locked. He knocks, he steps back, and he fires 9 rounds. He then walks around. You don't see this, but he fires into the windshield, and then you'll see him fire on the east side. So after we see him fire on the east side and walk back to the alley, stop it at that point, okay? And this is all from Foreman's video system. And this is Hode walking. You can see he's got the gun. And Foreman's in the office and hears this. As he's walking around to the east side, he had already put the round in the windshield, and that's when he's firing into the window on the east side. And then he comes back out and he walks east in the alley. Okay, so I'll always stop it there. So at some point after Hode left Foreman's house, dumping those 11 rounds into it, is that he acquired a 30-06 rifle that had a scope on it. And he went to Ed LeBounty's home at 4620 47th Way, which would have been just to the east and to the north from where he was walking, where you saw him in the video. And Ed is another guy who, as a neighbor, was fed up and had made it known that he wanted Hode out of the neighborhood. They had had encounters, again, over these, what most characterize as petty neighborhood disputes. And he went to Ed's home, knocked on the door when he had the rifle in his hand and the 9mm pistol in his hand, and asked for Ed. He was there to kill Ed. And Ed's daughter said he wasn't there, and Hode told the daughter, stay inside and lock the door. At that point, Hode walked away from the front of Ed's house and walked south, and that's when Sergeant Matt McLean was driving north on 47th Way from 46th Avenue and encountered Hode. So when Sergeant McLean is pulling northbound on 47th Way, he saw Hode with the rifle in his hand, and he did not immediately see the handgun. Hode began to walk to the south and to the west and behind some trees. Sergeant McLean, in seeing the rifle and seeing Hode, verbally challenged him and ordered him to drop the rifle. At that point, as he was verbally challenging him, Hode's reaction to the direction by Sergeant McLean to drop the firearms was to raise his hand with that pistol and fire 3 rounds at Sergeant McLean. 2 of the rounds entered Sergeant McLean's cruiser. So as you can see from here, and Sergeant McLean is extremely lucky, we are all extremely lucky, because where Sergeant McLean was standing was right between the 2 bullet holes. So as Sergeant McLean is standing, encountering Hode and telling him to drop the gun, and has his gun pointed at him at that point, and Hode fires, 1 round goes here, and 1 round goes here. Sergeant McLean, upon being fired on, returned fire and fired 3 shots, and he struck Hode in the upper torso and in the arm. So what I'm going to show you now, the rest of this video, is from another deputy's car who was responding. And this deputy was going westbound on 47th Avenue, approaching 47th Way. So Sergeant McLean had come in, as I explained to you this way, he had come into the west and he turned north here on 47th Way. And this is LaBounty's home. So after shooting up Foreman's house, he from someplace acquired the .30-06 rifle, walked over here, went to LaBounty's house, encountered LaBounty's daughter, and was walking back south when he encountered Sergeant McLean. Deputy Nicole Thompson was driving her cruiser, and she was going westbound on 47th Avenue and came south on 47th Way. So the video you're going to see here is from the dash camera of Deputy Thompson's cruiser, and you'll see where Sergeant McLean was, and you'll see as he shoots at Hode. You don't see Hode, you don't see him go down, but that's what you'll see is Sergeant McLean encountering Hode. So we'll go ahead and play that. We're going to show it to you. You'll see it a couple times. One, we slow it down. The other is in real time. This is Deputy Thompson going south on 47th. That's Sergeant McLean's cruiser parked right in front of her. Yeah, this is a slowed down version. You can see there he's pointed his gun at Hode. He shoots, and then he falls because he didn't have any cover, so he was trying to get to cover, and he fell backward. This is after he shot. This is real time. So by all accounts, Hode fired at least 16 rounds, and there was no doubt that he was looking to kill other people. By Sergeant McLean's actions in shooting Hode, there's no doubt that he saved lives and stopped Hode from doing what he was intent on doing, and that is a rampage to kill as many people as he could. Deputy Jeff Nelson, when he arrived on the scene, as you can see from the depiction here, again, we've got LaBounty's house, we've got Smith and Hode's apartment, we've got Foreman, and here Deputy Nelson and Deputy Savitz arrive. And when they get there, they walk around, and they were the first to come in and find Sean Smith, because Alan Cameron had run for his life, literally, is that he was just fleeing, trying to get away as fast as he could. And so Sean Smith was laying there on the ground, and he had been shot in the back. And when the deputies got to him, Deputy Nelson, Sean Smith was still awake, and he told Deputy Nelson that Hode is the one that shot him. He was gushing blood out of the front of his chest because the bullet went into the back and blew out the front of his chest. And there was a tremendous amount of blood and other bodily fluids just gushing out. And in reaction to that, Deputy Nelson saved Smith's life, at least so far, although he's in extremely critical condition and we don't know that he's going to make it. Deputy Nelson took off his uniform shirt, took off his bulletproof vest, and took off his t-shirt, and took his t-shirt and literally stuffed it into Smith's chest and was able to stop the gushing of the blood and the other bodily fluids that were coming out. And because of that, he did not bleed out at the scene. When the paramedics got there, they loaded Smith up and took him to Bayfront Medical Center, to the trauma center. And the doctors there had Deputy Nelson literally keep his hand in Smith's chest with his t-shirt stuffed in there until they took him all the way up to the operating room. And it wasn't until the operating room that they told him to take it off, and then the doctors were able to take over. And it wasn't for Deputy Nelson doing that and literally stripping down and taking his t-shirt to stuff Smith's chest. By all accounts, Smith wouldn't be alive today. So Deputy Nelson did a great job, and he's really a hero for what he did. We certainly hope that Mr. Smith survives, but I can tell you that he is in extremely critical condition. His condition is definitely life-threatening. He was in surgery again today. Hode is also in Bayfront and remains in critical condition and has had multiple surgeries. Detectives served a search warrant on Hode's apartment and found some rambling writings indicating his blame of and dislike for his neighbors. So as I said, Hode was on a rampage to kill as many people as he could on Tuesday with his 9mm semi-automatic handgun, with that 30-06 rifle with a scope, and he had plenty of extra ammunition. And he was actively trying to find as many people as he felt responsible for his eviction so that he could kill them. So with that, that's the situation and overview, and happy to answer any questions that you might have. We'll get you all a copy of those videos and what we played up there, and anything you want from what's here on display. And this is where the rifle and the pistol, that's the pistol that he used to do the shooting. And that's where it was as we found it there at the scene after he was shot by Sergeant McLean, and that's where things were dropped. And you can see the one magazine there, and he reloaded. You can see in the video when he leaves the east side of Foreman's house, you can see the slide lock back, so he reloaded in there at some point. And again, he had plenty of ammunition with him. And there was a lot of ammunition found in the house too. Anybody got anything before we switch gears to another topic? Anybody have any questions? Yeah. All right. All right, so we talk about Deputy Steve Smith. He was employed by the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office as a law enforcement deputy since October of 2012. Prior to that, he served as a deputy sheriff with the Baker County Sheriff's Office in Northeast Florida. While here at the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, Smith was a patrol deputy and a narcotics detective. He was assigned to narcotics from September of 2013 until April of 2015. While assigned to narcotics, Smith developed some performance issues such as not turning in reports on time, not appearing for court, low productivity, and other performance issues of that nature. Smith was put on a performance improvement plan in early 2015, but his performance did not improve and he was transferred from narcotics back to patrol. While in patrol, he continued to have performance issues, and that resulted in an internal affairs investigation for which he received a suspension. Last month, Smith was disciplined for not timely servicing his car, and he continued to have performance issues with not turning in reports, low productivity, and things along those lines. So he was transferred from the night shift out of our North District station to day shift, and he was put on the desk. During the course of all of this, during the last couple of years, really, of these performance issues and seeing problems with Smith, we did what we normally do, which was to try and find a cause of it. When you got a good employee, but when Smith started here from the Baker County Sheriff's Office, he was a good deputy, he was a productive deputy, he was doing his job and did it well. We started seeing the decline, and when you start seeing that kind of a decline, the first thing you want to do is find out why. So supervisors began to talk to him and did an intervention of sorts to try and find out, is there something in his personal life, is there something going on, why all of a sudden we're seeing this? And supervisors weren't able to detect anything. Smith just said that he would improve, said there was nothing going on in his personal life, and there's nothing that they saw that was of substance that they could define as causation for these poor performance and poor performance issues. About a week ago, we received information from Smith's former girlfriend that he was addicted to prescription drugs and that he had stolen drugs that he came across in the course of his work as a deputy sheriff. According to the girlfriend, Smith had a bottle of oxycodone in a drawer in the bedroom of his residence. Smith told the girlfriend that a citizen brought the unused drugs to the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office North District Station for destruction because the patient that those drugs, the oxycodone, were prescribed for had died. Instead of properly disposing of the oxycodone, Smith told his girlfriend that he stole the drugs for his own personal consumption. The girlfriend provided us with a photograph of the stolen drugs and the pill bottle in Smith's bedroom. And that's what we received. So it's a bottle of oxycodone, and those are oxycodone pills that came out of the bottle. The girlfriend also provided us with a name that was on that pill bottle. So sheriff's detectives conducted an investigation and determined that on September 24th, 2016, at about 6:15 p.m., two citizens, in fact, arrived at our North District station where Smith was working the front desk. And they came to turn in unused medication that belonged to their now deceased sister. The citizens provided numerous pill bottles to Smith for destruction. But instead of processing some of these pills, including the ones you see here in the picture to my right, for destruction, Smith placed them in a food bag and later left the front desk at the North District Station and placed this bag in the back of his sheriff's office cruiser. The deceased sister for whom the oxycodone pills were prescribed is of the same name on the pill bottle that Smith's girlfriend found in his bedroom drawer that he said he stole from a deceased person. So the name that was on that pill bottle that was in his bedroom is the name of the sister who had deceased, and those folks brought their pills into us. So it came from them. Those were the people that brought it in and gave us her name, and that's the pill bottle with her name that's in his bedroom. So Smith's actions of placing the pills in the bag and then placing them in his cruiser were captured on videotape surveillance as a result of cameras installed at our North District station. Now, the investigation is ongoing, but I can tell you that he may have taken as many as 3 of these oxycodone pill bottles and probably over 300 pills, but we're still trying to determine the exact quantity. Yesterday afternoon, Smith was approached by detectives and questioned. What he told us as a result of that interview is that he has a long-term back injury, and as a result of that, had been prescribed oxycodone and morphine by his own doctor, and as a result has become addicted to painkillers. The amount of Oxycontin that Smith's doctor prescribes to him is not enough for him due to his addiction, and he takes more than the doctor has prescribed. And Smith admitted to us that he has a drug problem. So in the process of terminating Smith's employment, he was asked to return all of his equipment, which included an agency-issued Glock Model 30 handgun, which he had been issued. He couldn't produce the weapon, and when asked why he couldn't give us the weapon to turn it back in, he told us that he had pawned his agency-issued gun at a pawn shop in Pasco County. We were able to verify that he had in fact pawned it, and it was at a pawn shop up on State Road 54. So Smith's employment has been terminated here at the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. He was arrested last night on charges of grand theft for stealing the gun. Because it happened in Pasco County with the pawn, we can't charge that, but that'll be referred to the state attorney's office for charges of dealing in stolen property and false verification of ownership, which is also a felony because that occurred in Pasco. We also charged him with grand theft for stealing the drugs and for possession of the oxycodone that he was not authorized to possess. He didn't have a prescription for it. He was booked into the Pinellas County Jail last night and bonded out early today. You know, this is a situation, unfortunately, that is caused by drug addiction, and one we see far too often, as it ruins lives and careers. It also reaffirms what we know too well and have seen too many times with this prescription drug abuse epidemic that we still have in our community. That this type of addiction knows no boundaries, it crosses all socioeconomic lines and affects everyone from street addicts to professionals. It also shows that cops, like everyone else, are vulnerable to addiction, and despite that vulnerability, they are going to be and are held accountable, just like everyone else. This is caused by addiction. He's got a tremendous amount of relationship issues with ex-wives, girlfriends, really doesn't even have a place to live. Was staying with somebody that he was paying $150 a week to because he didn't have a room. He has no money. You got a guy that has been destroyed because of his addiction to oxycodone. And again, we've seen this, and you all have reported on it so many times, and this happens to every walk of life, unfortunately, because it is a very serious addiction problem, and it's professionals from doctors and lawyers to accountants to media people to street addicts. And this is just a terrible situation because it's somebody who, when he came to us from the Baker County Sheriff's Office, was a good deputy, he was a good cop, and just deteriorated over time. And frankly, I wish that in our conversations with him and our discussions and the interactions he had with our supervisors, that they were able to figure this out and were able to get him help. But you can't help somebody that won't admit they have a problem, and if you can't detect what the problem is, then there's not much you can do about it. And as it continues to spiral, sometimes it has to spiral too far, and this spiraled too far to the point where now he's facing some very serious felony charges, and he's lost his job over it, as he should. And as I said, this is an addiction problem, but law enforcement officers and deputy sheriffs here in Pinellas County are going to be held to the same standard as anybody else, and he needs to face the consequences for his actions, and we hope he gets the help he needs and that the system holds him accountable for what he did, and stealing the drugs and trying to steal the gun. So, anybody got any questions on that?
How was it not noticed maybe sooner that his gun was missing?
So he had 2. Okay, is that he had 2, and this was a secondary gun. Some do, yeah. It's not. Put it this way, it's not uncommon, and some have multiple, and so it just depends upon their assignments and where they've been. So I would say, yeah, it is common. So it's not unusual.
Can you characterize his demeanor when he told you that he pawned his service weapon?
Again, because this is a guy now, he's broken, and he said that he just didn't have any money, needed to pay bills, and it's his way of dealing with being backed into a corner. He had nothing, and we could tell just by his cruiser, quite honestly, it was a mess. He might even been living in that for a little while. I mean, this guy was on a complete spiral. But again, Peter, this is nothing. When we look at the people we come across, and this person happens to be a cop, happens to be a deputy sheriff, and it does make it worse in many respects. But we see this, time and time again. You see people in all walks of life that just the bottom falls out, and they got some real serious problems, and their life is destroyed because of the addiction, and they've got nothing. You see people who are thriving and highly successful that are homeless and on the street because of Oxycontin.
Were you able to determine if the back injury that he claimed, was that a legitimate?
Well, as far as we know it is, because the doctor he was going to he wasn't from what, we don't have any information he was going to a pill mill or, anybody, and he did have legitimate back issues. And again, that's another really sad part of this that we see way too often. And that's why I say that this problem, this issue, is very, very unique because, back in the day when the drug of choice was crack cocaine, and some of that's coming back, but back in the 90s, is that you didn't see this type of drug addiction to this extent in all walks of life. You didn't see it cross all those socioeconomic lines because in order to get to that point, you had to go on the street and buy the heroin. You had to go on the street and buy the crack. You had to do it in a clandestine way from drug dealers. But not with this stuff, because you got everybody who's got these pain issues that goes to these doctors and they take a couple and they get hooked. So you see people, it's not limited to the lower socioeconomic areas. It's people in Palm Harbor and Tierra Verde and Feather Sound and you name it. And you see this time and time again, and then their life spirals and it bottoms out and they're destroyed. So it's a unique situation because you have more and more people that have become addicted. Remember, at one point in time, Pinellas County led the state of Florida in prescription drug overdose deaths. And it shows that this problem continues. We know it does. It's not as bad as it used to be. We made great progress with it. But we can't make any mistake that this problem still exists, it is still here, and it's still destroying lives. And at the core of it goes back to what all drug problems are all about, and that is addiction. And it's really sad, and I feel for him to a degree. But there was help available. But I don't think he was at a point where he could avail himself of the help, and I hope he gets the help he needs.
Sheriff, it sounds like this deputy got a lot of chances. Is the union too strong to fight? There was a lot of red flags transferring.
Right.
Multiple times for performance issues.
Right.
Why couldn't you fire him then?
Well, none of it rose to the level, Josh, of really being that serious. I mean, the things that he was doing, like he wasn't turning in reports on time, his productivity wasn't there, he wouldn't show up for a deposition, or he was late for court, those kinds of things. And it hadn't boiled to the point. It was getting there. And this is where recently when he was transferred off of nights, because this was an ongoing, and they thought they put him on the desk for a while, and supervisors were getting very frustrated with it because they're trying, is they recognize we got an issue, but like anything, you can't solve a problem where you don't know what the problem is. So you got to identify it. And he wasn't showing up for work under the influence. Doesn't look like he's intoxicated. He wasn't, and what he was told us he was doing is he purposely wasn't taking the drugs when he came to work, and then he'd go home and he'd double down. He was to the point where we found straws on him, is that he was pill crushing because his stomach was so messed up from taking so much of this, so he's going home and he's actually crushing the pills and snorting them. I mean, and he's double dipping it, later on. So he was trying to mask it and hide it. Of course, we knew there was a problem, and we were trying to identify, what that problem was. And we knew he was having issues with his wife, ex-wife, et cetera. So we're trying to figure it out. But, until you can identify it then there's very little you could do about it. If we could have identified it as such, then we would have done everything we could to get them into treatment, as we've done with others. But when people don't want help and they won't identify, and you got an issue, but it was, are we at all surprised based upon what we saw that it got to this point? No, because it was spiral, and that's why they'd taken them off the street and put them on the desk. But now we took them off the street to put them on the desk to try and identify this further and keep him from getting into trouble, et cetera. But now look what he does when we put him on the desk. So, it was just one of those things that was, I guess, bound to happen because of that addiction problem and that spiral that he was on.
What are their responsibilities working at the front desk?
The desk deputies to greet citizens when they come in, for making complaints, when there are calls made to the communication center that don't necessitate a deputy going out. They'll take reports over the phone. They'll take complaints of crime, or a lot of citizens will come in and just ask questions. So it's to staff the desk, to take reports, conduct some very minor investigations, take reports over the phone, that kind of activity.
And how often would you say you have people coming in bringing in pills to be destroyed?
Daily, multiple times a day, here at the Sheriff's Administration Building and at our North District Station. So we get a lot of it because we encourage people to do it. Because they should end up in the right hands, not the wrong hands, and they should be destroyed. And that's what happens every day, multiple times a day, except for this one anomaly because of these circumstances.
Can you go over his employment track one more time?
Sure. So he began working for us in 2012. He was in patrol from 2012, October of 2012 until September of 2013, where he transferred to narcotics, and then he remained in narcotics until April of 2015, where he transferred back to patrol until he was terminated yesterday.
Silver Dollar Pond, State Road 54?
Pardon me?
Silver Dollar Pond?
Let me look. It's a pawn shop. Yes, Silver Dollar Pawn on State Road 54. Yes. Yep. All right. Anybody got anything else? Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.